Welcome back to Yahoo Finance Live. The London Stock Exchange Group reported earnings from the first half of the year, noting a slight decline in listings. But CEO David Schwimmer is optimistic that a new wave of IPOs, initial public offerings, could be on the way. For more on that, let's bring in David, again, CEO of the London Stock Exchange Group. Great to have you on the program this morning, David. First of all, just kind of unpack what you've been seeing in capital markets. Obviously, public offerings and companies eager to tap the capital markets, a big part of your business. What did that look like over the first half of 2022, and what's your outlook for the remainder of the year?
So definitely a slower first half in terms of IPOs, given the market environment. Not particularly surprising, given the volatility, given the war in Ukraine. But I must say, Brian, in terms of first the pipeline, that market will come back. The IPO market closes, it opens, that'll come back. And then in terms of our overall business, the London Stock Exchange, great part of our business, fantastic business, but less than 5% of our overall revenue. And we've seen great growth across all of our businesses with 7% top line growth and broad-based growth across our capital markets division where the London Stock Exchange itself exists. Our post-trade business, 9% plus 9% growth. And then in terms of our data and analytics division, 5% growth. So really across the board, pretty strong performance. I'm really pleased with that. Yeah,
as you mentioned, David, a lot of arms that you have over there at the London Stock Exchange Group. But I do want to just kind of focus still on the market side of things, just because you have such an interesting and unique vantage point from that front. I mean, when you say you do expect things to get a little bit better, I mean, we've already seen kind of a rebound so far this summer. But is there anything idiosyncratic to specifically Europe that you've seen as an interesting factor here when you consider you've seen the Bank of England's projections over a possible recession happening in that area, broad Eurozone projections showing similar slowdowns as well? How do you think that affects companies that, still want to do capital raising, but it's just such an uncertain environment right now?
Well, one of the things that is a bit different about Europe, particularly relative to the US, is the energy challenge. Europe is more exposed to what's going on in Russia and the gas dependency there. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm not in a position to predict, but that is a greater sensitivity relative to the US. In terms of some of the other aspects that we've seen in the overall environment, whether that's inflation, recession risk, some of the other challenges, you're seeing inflation in Europe, you're seeing inflation in the US, you're seeing recession risk in all the different markets. But I would say the energy exposure, the gas exposure in Europe is a little bit of a different one.
So let's switch over to data analytics. That's been a very interesting part of your business when we just track the evolution with the acquisition of Refinitiv. I believe that was about a year and a half ago or so. So you've seen revenues up about 5%. How important is that data business to what you're doing here? What do you see as the synergies between, a pre-Refinitiv acquisition, London Stock Exchange Group, and a post-acquisition?
Well, it's been a transformational acquisition for us. If you go back prior to our closing of the Refinitiv transaction, the London Stock Exchange Group, LSEG, was an important provider of execution venues, mainly in equities and largely with a European focus. Geographically, we largely had a European focus. And in terms of our data and analytics capability, we had the FTSE Russell business and we had some very attractive fixed income analytics capabilities. Today, we are one of the world's leading providers of financial market infrastructure and data on a global basis across asset classes. So instead of being primarily focused on equities, we now have leading execution venues in equities, foreign exchange, and fixed income, again, on a global basis. We have 25,000 people around the world. We have a presence in 70 countries. And that presence is in the Americas. We have several thousand people in the Americas. We have 10,000 plus people in Asia. And then as a data and analytics provider, we're one of the world's leading providers of financial data and analytics. We're the world's #1 provider of real-time data, leading provider of background check information for banks doing KYC and AML through our World Check database. So it's been a transformational transaction for us, really positioned us globally as one of the world's leading providers of, as I said, financial market infrastructure and data across asset classes, across the trade lifecycle.
All right, London Stock Exchange Group CEO David Schwimmer, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.